Okay, we'll make this quick. I'm going to start off with some definitions. The important definition I think here is going to be should, defined as must or ought. I'm going to make an important distinction here. I'm not going to be arguing for the rightness or wrongness of parents lying to their kids or lying in general. I'm not suggesting that parents that are wrong when they lie to their children. What I am going to argue is that a lie may be tempting option for a parent, but there are always better and ultimately healthier alternatives. Second, we're going to talk about what a lie is. A lie is a false statement made with the deliberate intent to deceive and an intentional untruth, a falsehood. Okay. Before I go in, since I've just got 20 seconds left, I'm just going to go ahead and pass the mic.
All right. So, yes, I definitely agree. Just basically on the premise that we are not arguing the morality of lying to children. And I mean, I really have no disagreements in the definition you gave of what is a lie. And on my side as well, I mean, we're definitely agree we're not arguing at all the morality or whether parents, should or shouldn't. I'm sorry, what we're looking at is parents should never lie to their children. That's basically the statement that we're going towards, not whether or not it's okay or whether or not the morality exists. So I'll pass the mic back.
Okay, I'm going to be building my argument around the principles of self-determination theory. Okay, self-determination theory is concerned with supporting the natural intrinsic tendencies to teach children to behave in effective and healthy ways, and in general, just to make them healthy adults. Okay, self-determination theory requires that three specific psychological needs be met. These are competence, which is the control of outcomes, achieving mastery of their environment; relatedness, which is to connect, interact, care for, or be cared about by others; and autonomy, to be in control of one's own life and to live in accordance with one's own desires. In my next round, I'm going to be explaining how lying detrimentally impacts all three of these psychological needs, and this is why we should never lie to our children.
I guess so several of the points that you made, again, I would most likely agree with, except for the statement of the never part. Never is a bold term. It implies, absolute never. So I'm arguing for the fact that there are several cases that are justifiable to tell a lie. It does sound bad to most people, and when you think of it, just as a way it sounds, you're a liar, you lie. But the fact of the matter is, in the society, I see it as it is sometimes a necessity that people have to go through life. Whether or not that's correct or whether or not you agree with that, I mean, that is definitely a different argument, but that would be my answer to that. Pass it back.
Okay, I'm going to just continue a little bit, give some more information in mind, then I'm going to try to address your points here. Lying to children as a result of the intrinsic nature of deception diminishes and impedes the child from meeting the basic psychological needs I spoke about in my last round. For one, lying to children impedes their ability to control the outcomes and achieve mastery of their environment, because if you've lied to them, then they don't have any idea what their environment actually is. They think their environment is something different than what it really is. Lying to children impedes their ability to connect or interact with one another, just because when you lie to a child and they find out, then they globally think that now all adults lie to them, or their parents will always lie to them. I'll touch on that again in my next round. And then lying to children impedes their ability to connect because as they, impede.
All right, so I do want to address the point that you're making about the study. So there is also another study from the University of Oxford that they did a study of the types of lying. So they broke down lying to an antisocial type of lying, and what they're calling a pro-social type of lying. And the pro-social type of lying is what's more commonly known to me and you, common layman's terms, a white lie or a fib, and antisocial lying is what's known as, the deliberate deception, malicious intent, and which is something that they see as destructive to bonds between people, whereas
Okay, I just want to point out that in some research that we're doing, they found here that MIT have found that children are not gullible and they can in fact sense when parents are lying to them, causing them to distrust the very people or their caregivers. Children also tend to know when their parents are withholding information. What you're calling a fib or a white lie, these are just lazy lies. We can all think of in scenarios where we lie to our kids. For instance, if your daughter wants to go to the ice skating park, you tell her no, it's closed. She finds out from her friends that it was actually open. Here's what's going to happen. Their daughter or your child is going to globalize and say, my parent is a liar. They're also lying. Are they also lying about loving me? This is the security system that the child has in their parents and in that parental relationship that's supposed to be their strongest and most beneficial relationship has been undermined.
All right. So basically, again, I'm not at all disagreeing with that lying to your children is not correct. We're not arguing whether it's correct or not. What we are arguing is whether you should never lie to them. And I believe that unequivocally there are cases, not common, and of course not every single case, but there's a lot of cases that you can make the argument to where it's actually would be mentally harmful to the child to know the full, unedited, unsugar-coated, if you will, truth. And then that argument has been made by many psychologists, several which have pointed out that that indeed certain truths they're not able to process in their.
Okay, I'm going to just have to simply disagree that lying in any situation is going to be the best alternative. In a case where one might think, oh, let's lie to the child, we should redirect. I would challenge you to offer any scenario in which lying would be better than redirecting, explaining the truth, simply saying nothing. There are several. I cannot think. I mean, I'll just give you an opportunity to provide one of these scenarios, and we can see where maybe a redirection, some other form of response to the scenario aside from lying. I think that'd be the best way to go about this. I mean, if we can concede that there are better alternatives in every situation that you present, then it seems like it would be in general cause that there would be no reason that lying would be the best solution. I'm going to pass the mic.
Sure, absolutely. So again, it's not an ideal. It's not. I'm not arguing for whether or not I myself would agree with doing it in this way or not. But the question still remains whether the statement is you should never lie to the children. And there are plenty of documented studies that show psychological damage can cause, prolonged mental anguish to kids, things of this nature. So only thing I'm arguing for is that there's certain ages where children are able to process information. And of course, some children are much more advanced. They can take an adult situation and process it. But there are, in many cases, let's just take for an example, in a case where somebody's parent goes to jail for life for murdering someone. Let's say they murdered their other parent. How would you go about that?
Sure. I'm not sure how in that situation lying to the child would be beneficial to the child. And what would you lie to them and say, assuming your father killed the mother, oh, your father died or your father went away to war? No. it would be better to explain to the child in terms that they can understand. Daddy did something really bad to mommy, so now daddy has to go away for a while. The child will understand, because there's always going to become an opportunity when that child is going to find out the truth. And if they've been lied to, if they've been told that their father was dead and found out their father is alive, I mean, or if they found out that, he went away to work or went away to overseas and found out, oh no, what really happened is he killed my mother. So they're going to have to, instead of processing that healthily, getting the help they need at the time when they need it, they're going to have had this whole childhood built on a lie or about what happened to their parent. So in a situation where the parent disappears because of a crime like that, it seems the truth would be the only way.
So the reason why I mentioned something like that is because, again, we're talking about in an extreme case. And in certain cases, of course, if the child is of certain age that they can process something like that, then they'll be, it's totally appropriate, and the best way to go about it is the absolute truth. But if you're talking about a child that's 5 years old, 4 years old, 3 years old, you are not going to take the time to outline the details of something that gruesome. That's just an example of something that has gone on in society and that will go on. And if that if that person or that parent decides to save their child that anguish, that mental anguish off the bat, or if it's going to affect them knowing the full truth, then of course telling a lie and its definition is an option.
Okay, I just want to be clear. Let's just go back to the scenario you presented. Say that one parent killed another. You don't have to tell the 2-year-old and 3-year-old the details. You don't have to show them the crime scene photos. You can just say that this happened in terms that they can understand. There's no sense in lying to them, because they're going to eventually find out the truth. And when they do find out the truth, the fact that you lied to them is going to cause them more mental anguish. You say you want to save them some pain at the time. Well, if they're 2 or 3 years old, they're not going to suffer the same type of pain. You can mitigate that by talking in the language that they can understand. You can redirect them. You can explain the situation. And then, even as tough it is for them, and as it becomes tough for them throughout the rest of their life, they're not going to also have to deal with the extra turmoil of, oh yeah, my caregiver who now takes care of me, assuming it's one of the grandparents or somebody, that person also lied to me for a majority of my childhood, also told me all these things that were true, or told me, yes, everything was fine. Maybe there was an accident or something. I mean, that just...
Sure. No. And I'm not, again, disputing whether or not this is morally right or not morally right. It basically boils down to whether you should never. And I'm definitely making the argument that there are cases where you should. Kids do not need to know everything of that in some cases is either beyond their understanding. Sometimes you may not know it, but that child might be having mental anguish through it, and they could be dealing with something just from knowing too much information that they can't process themselves. Of course, we're not talking about majority of cases. In majority of cases, I agree with you completely. Telling the truth to your children is the best policy, but we are talking about, in many cases, children. So there are cases that you can absolutely make the case for that you can do more harm by telling the full truth.
Okay, just to address that again, to me, it seems like if we take a child who's had this traumatic event happen to them, when they find out the truth about the traumatic event, it's going to be traumatic for them. We can both agree with that. When they find out about it, however they find out about it, let's say it's going to be equally traumatic if they find out when it's their 2 or 3-year-old, if they find out when they're 10 or 13, or if they find out when they're 17 or 18. So they're going to be, for the individual, it's going to be equally traumatic. Now, couple those later times that they find out with the fact that now they've also been lied to, the people who they have the best and closest relationship with, their caregivers. They've also been lied to. So not only are they finding out the initial trauma, so that's going to be there. They're going to be an additional pain and suffering brought about by having been deceived. And so they're not going to know their world. Their entire understanding of the world is going to be false. So it seems like at any point besides after the lie is worse.
Well, the reason I say that in certain, because they've actually done the research, and I was reading a couple of articles where they researched that a child's development of being just the ability to tell a lie is actually a good point in their development, because they're developing imagination, sense of reality, what someone else thinks and how someone else processes information. So you can't discount, of course, majority of the times the child should be let know what is going on and let them figure it out. But there are some cases where all of this information would be causing more damage to the child. And you keep saying, not telling the full truth. Omission of truth is also a lie.
Okay, so I'm going to just have to keep coming back and saying that in addition to any traumatic event that a child has that we might think to talk to them about or lie to them about, the fact that we also lie to them when they do find out about the truth of the traumatic event is going to cause additional harm. So if they focus, as with the lie would be to save that child from harm, lying to them will cause additional harm when they do actually find out. Now, remember, this is saying that you should never lie to your children when you're talking about these extreme examples, because it will always come out to be worse. I think I've addressed your situation about the murdering parents, how whenever they find out the truth about what happened, that the fact that if they find out when they're young or they find out when they're older, or the fact that there's been a lie, there is going to be worse.
Well, I think what maybe was misunderstood from my argument is that you're just simply lying to the child and you're just going to, live out that lie until they figure something out. That's not at all what I'm saying. And this is just scenarios. In that case, most different people would do it differently, but you wouldn't want to wait until, the child themselves is mentally able to process the information. That's how I would do it. I wouldn't just flat out come out and give them the full truth. Of course, omitting parts of things is still lying. So that's the only reason where we're probably just drifting apart a little bit on the definition of it. And I still definitely say that there are many cases you can think of where it would be best at the moment to lie to that child.
Okay. Again, I'm not saying that you need to bring out the graphic details of some horrific event in the child's life. You can take the child's level of understanding. You can tell them the truth in terms that they would understand. You're not omitting anything by putting it into a language that they understand. As a child get older, as they ask more questions, then you can give them more information as they develop. In your scenario, when they're young and they ask the question, you lie to them. So then when they get older, like a year or two older, and they ask, hey, where's mommy and daddy when they're coming home? Well, you're just going to have to continue to lie to them. Or at that point, do you tell them, oh, no, back a year ago, I lied to you. Your dad actually killed your mom. So no, so then you lie to them again. So then when they're 7 or 8 or they're 9 or 10, they're going to keep asking you. You're just going to have to keep compounding the lie, and it just keeps worse. It just keeps getting worse. It is just, if you start at the beginning by telling the truth, even if you tell it in terms, it's always going to be better.
It's definitely, I definitely agree with a lot of those points. It just still comes back to whether or not there are cases that can be justified. And just off the research alone, there are many cases where if they are known that the child is not mentally capable of dealing with certain information and they still are given this information, that can cause several different factors of other problems. So they could go out and try to, on their own, experiment with what they think that information is, and there's no one there to really help them, guide them through it. There's just, it all boils down to knowing the kid's level of understanding, and there's no cookie cutter answer to it. That's why it makes this question so difficult, because there is no, you have to look at every single scenario completely independent.
Okay, so I'm going to just argue that I don't think that there is a scenario where lying to the children is going to be superior to not lying to them, to redirecting them, to just simply saying nothing. I challenge you to offer up another scenario. I don't believe that the scenario of the parents, one killing the other parent, or was sufficient. If you think you do, of course we can revisit it. But do you have another scenario? You've mentioned that there were several scenarios where it might be preferential to lie to a child, but I just don't think that you've yet provided one that can't be, where a different action is not more justified. And if something is going to cause less harm to the child, then of course that the parent should do the one that will cause less harm. And in every case that you've run so far, it's just the addition of the lie just makes the scenario worse and causes more pain to the child.
So again, what we have to look at is just this term lie. We just, the way we even say it, it seems it's this horrible thing. But I mean, the definition wise, we simply lie all the time. And in certain cases, you simply have to respect other people's point of view if they feel that it's justified for them to lie to their children at that point. That's all I'm arguing. I'm not arguing whether or not I agree with, in certain cases, how I would do it, how I would approach the situation. But you can justify it in many cases simply from the type of damage that could happen to that child. So whether you're lying to them maliciously, which is not the case of what I'm talking about, whether you're omitting a full truth, that is still technically lying. That's what I'm.
Okay, I mean, I'm not going to lie or deny that people lie all the time. I'm not going to shame parents by saying that they have or have not ever lied to or if they have lied to their children, that they're doing anything wrong. I'm just saying that in every case that the child has lied, or that the parents have lied to the child, there have been better alternatives that will cause overall less harm to the child, and will go back to be more beneficial to the child. I've moved away from my own arguments to address yours, but the idea is that by lying to the child, we are actually impeding their growth. We are changing reality for them instead of allowing them to adapt and to get used to reality. So parents should not lie to their children, because it just is a negative to them overall. Any situation that a parent can come in and say, okay, look, I lied to my children here, maybe I was justified. Ask that parent, do you think that there was a better alternative? Of course they're going to say yes.
So yeah, absolutely. And see, now I would definitely agree with you if the question alone was, should parents lie to their children? And of course, the overall answer that any decent person would give you is that they shouldn't. But the question is, parents should never lie to their children. And I definitely see many scenarios where you have the justification, and you bring up studies of what it causes, but there are also opposing studies that show the opposite, that show that when a child develops the ability to lie, so recognize and develop the ability to lie, it actually shows an improvement in their development stages, which is a good thing. The lying is not what we're labeling the good.
Okay, I'm just going to come back. I have an article here from Psychology Today that suggests that when parents tell a lie to a child that the child knows the answer to, okay, it ends up making the children doubt themselves. So children aren't stupid. Children have an ability to understand their world around them. We can all agree on that. So that when we lie to them and they know the answer, they're going to end up doubting themselves. Now, having a child doubt themselves is going to always be more negative than a situation when you don't lie to the child and the child doesn't doubt themselves. You keep again coming back that there's all these scenarios where lying would be justified. And I'm challenging you on that. I'm saying there is no scenario where lying would be justified as opposed to doing another action. We've already agreed that in every action that parents, when they do lie to their children, they would say that there was something else better they could have done. Give me a scenario.
So just like I said, an example for, let's just say another parent just completely left out of that child's life. And that parent decides to, when the child is young, not let that child know about it for whatever their reasons may be. Whether it be to spare the child the feelings at the beginning. I'm not advocating for, continuing that forever. It's just at the moment when if they're not mentally able to actually process that information, that's the times when I believe that it is justified to tell a lie or not tell them the full truth of the scenario. Like you said, you sometimes have to omit things that in definition is lying.
Just a quick question. You can take as long as you want to answer. In that situation that you described, do you think that there's a better alternative to lying to that child about the whereabouts of the missing parent? Is there a better way to do that?
It depending on each child, absolutely. If the child is older and they're at a certain age, maybe in their teens, where they're not just a 43-year-old toddler, you're not going to go into graphic detail with that toddler about what the reality of the relationship was. A teenager, you're not. It's not the same. We're not discussing such a kid that's older, almost an adult, young adult. We're talking strictly about children. And of course, if it's your children, they can be any age. But the only part where I'm going as to, yes, that it is justifiable to that you sometimes do the better way is to keep the truth from them at that moment. That's what I'm arguing for.
It seems to me that to keep the truth from them at that moment, instead of presenting that truth in the way that they can understand, say the father leaves the home and it's just the mother and the child. The mother can say, well, daddy left. Daddy's not coming back. I don't know if daddy's coming back. They can say that. That's the truth. That's giving the child the situation in a way that they can understand. There's no need for them to lie and say, daddy went away to sea, daddy got killed in the war. I mean, there's no need for there to be a lie. So a lie will only make finding out the truth worse. All that the lie did is make the parent feel better at the time, and doing something selfishly, lying to our children because it makes us feel better at the time or makes it easier for us at the time, is not a reason to lie. Parents should never lie to their children, especially when in the long run that lie is going to cause more harm and anguish to their children, which I think we can agree that a child finding out that not only did one parent leave, but another.
So let's just take an example. If you have a kid that's in kindergarten, first grade, and they come home, they've already, they're already a kid that's kind of awkward, doesn't have a lot of friends. They come home with a project and it's just a really awful drawing, pretty terrible. And they ask you, what about this project? Oh, look what I made. It may seem silly, but at that point, I would believe 99% of the parents listening to this are going to tell their kid that is a great drawing, that they're doing a great job. This is just a small example of why I don't agree that parents should never lie to their children. That's the key point here. I would probably agree that 99% of the time, parents should not lie to their children, but I don't agree that parents should never lie to their children.
Okay, I just want to repeat the research from MIT here that says children are not gullible, and they can in fact sense when parents are lying to them, causing them to distrust the very people who are their caregivers. All right, if someone brings in the project, like you said, and it's a bad project, the parent doesn't have to say, oh, wow, that's wonderful. The parent can say something along the lines of, what do you like about it? I like it because you made it. Can you tell me what we could do to make it better? Children aren't gullible. If you say, oh, that's a beautiful project, the kid already knows that it's not a great project. He knows that his friends tell him it's not a great project. He knows that his teachers told him it's not a great project. Why have his parents lie to them when he already knows the truth? He'll just question himself. He'll just question the relationship with his parents. He'll just question the relationship with all of his relationships. Parents lying to their children, lying in general, causes more harm than it can possibly cause good.
So yeah, like I said, I mean, I definitely agree with like over 90% of what you mean. But the very bottom line point is, should they never lie to the children? And I disagree